Well, good Monday evening to you. I am First Alert meteorologist David Ernst here with your weather update. As the graphic would suggest, severe weather outlook in the high category tonight. Strong to severe storms anticipated. Likely arrival time after midnight, but storms should be gone by 5 o'clock in the morning. Damaging wind gusts, heavy rainfall are going to be your primary threats. Can't rule out an isolated tornado or some large hail accompanying the more intense storms, but as things get more organized through the night, this has the classic look of a damaging wind event. If we're going to see any severe warnings, that's likely what they would be for, 60, 70 mile per hour plus winds, as opposed to anything else. It's a good reminder to have multiple ways of getting that weather alert information to you, especially with the early morning timing of this. So our free WBAY First Alert weather app is certainly a capable tool for that. If you're watching from a desktop or a laptop computer, you've got the QR code there right underneath my picture, or video, I guess I should say, where you can point your smartphone right at that QR code, and it'll take you to the splash page to download the app. If you're watching us on a mobile device, obviously, you can head to your app store and search WBAY First Alert Weather and download that app for free. It can send those alerts right to your phone. You can get live video right into your phone if the situation warrants that. We don't do that for every severe weather event, but if things take a turn tonight and we end up doing continuous coverage on our WBAY TV2 on our main air, which would be after the hockey game, we will stream that on into the app, news and weather apps. We can do that right through our website. So good idea to have your weather radio ready to go if you are someone who owns one of those. Have the batteries good and changed out. Make sure that it's able to stay powered on should you lose power, as this is going to be a situation where we could see some fairly widespread power outages depending on how these storms come in. So let's go ahead and take a look at where things stand right now and then build into the forecast. We'll take you through the forecast with First Alert Pinpoint Predictor. You can see a couple little areas of storms. You might hear my printer going off. These are storm reports actually from tornadoes that occurred over the weekend. So that's the National Weather Service in Milwaukee is sending out those surveys. Hopefully we don't have any of those to deal with tonight. Again, it's what the Storm Prediction Center would term as a non-zero risk for tornadoes. So it is possible that we do see an isolated tornado or two. You can't rule that out, but this is not a tornado outbreak type of event. Instead, you would expect more in the way of damaging wind gusts. So what we're expecting to have happen will be not necessarily the storms that are up right now. We should see some new development out ahead of that. In fact, you're starting to see a little bit pop right there in northwestern Wisconsin. We should see additional storms forming up in east central parts of Minnesota, northwestern Wisconsin behind this batch of clouds. So those storms will start popping here within the next hour or two, and then we would look for that to start pushing its way into our direction. Now, the storms up north may merge into that and help push that cluster along, but these storms are going to be quite formidable. The storms up right now do have severe thunderstorm warnings along them. Severe thunderstorm watch is already posted. It's likely that we will see a watch come out for the areas here of east central Minnesota and northwestern Wisconsin, and then that would be the activity that eventually gets into our area as it moves downstream. So let's take a look then at the forecast. First Alert Pinpoint Predictor, and we'll just kind of go through this frame by frame here. So we'll start you out midnight tonight, and that's right when storms should start to ease their way into north central Wisconsin. So at midnight, we should still be storm-free, certainly around the Fox Valley, but even into places like Langlade, Forest, Florence counties, likely that we don't see anything before midnight, but you may hear the storms approaching before they do arrive. So we'll take Predictor and move it up through 2 o'clock in the morning. And you can see that cluster evolving. So we'll see the individual storms popping up here within the next hour or two, and then they will grow into that cluster and advance downstream towards us. And we did actually see that play out farther to our south earlier in the evening. There was one lone storm that was coming out of the La Crosse area, and it eventually triggered a few severe thunderstorm warnings in southern Wisconsin. There's a severe thunderstorm watch that got posted for that, and we're looking at that same kind of an environment setting up. So as we get closer to 2 o'clock in the morning, and the timing here is very similar to what we were looking at if you were watching us at 6 o'clock. 5 o'clock, the model run had the storms coming in a little bit earlier, but timing is pretty consistent from one run to the next here. This is a higher resolution model. It will run every hour. So we have gotten another update since we were last on the air at 6 o'clock. But again, the timing is very similar, just given how it looks right now. So as we go through the 2 to 3 a.m. hour, you see those storms first coming out of north central Wisconsin, and by 3 o'clock already getting into the Fox cities. They're going to be very fast moving. That will work in our favor in terms of helping to mitigate the flooding potential, as there will be some very heavy rainfall that accompanies these storms, but they will be in and out of the area very quickly. So, even though instantaneous rain rates could be 5-7 inches an hour, the storms are moving at 60 or 70 miles per hour, so you don't get all that rain over that whole time frame. What you'd be expecting would be along the leading edge of this, where you see the greens quickly transitioning into those reds. That's going to be where your damaging wind threat is. And if the storms are moving at 60 or 70 miles per hour, it certainly doesn't take a whole lot to mix some of that momentum down to the ground with those rain showers, that heavy rainfall. So that's going to be our main concern as we go through the night with this storm cluster approaching, is going to be especially between about 2 and 4 o'clock in the morning for a round of damaging wind gusts. There would be power outages you would expect with that, with the winds of that magnitude. And given how wet it has been of late, you may not even need to see winds that strong to bring down trees or topple some power lines, as the wet ground just doesn't have the holding power that drier ground does. So you may see trees upended with winds even weaker than they otherwise normally would. So that is going to be a concern tonight. In fact, that would be, I would say, my main concern. Yes, there could be a spin-up tornado in the mix. I don't want to discount that threat. But I would take any severe thunderstorm warning that is issued tonight with the same gravity that you would a tornado warning. A lot of in fact, the tornado report here from the National Weather Service in Milwaukee, it was an EF0 on the ground for 5 miles, but 80-mile-an-hour winds. And you can see, I think 65 is where the EF0 starts. And I would expect that if we see some warnings issued tonight, they very well could be 65, 70-mile-per-hour straight-line winds. So you're talking similar damage to what an EF0 tornado would do. So you do want to take these storms seriously and have a good means of getting those alerts overnight tonight during the early morning hours as these storms move in. By 3 to 4 o'clock, that storm threat is shifting through Door County, pushing down towards Sheboygan, Manitowoc, and eventually off the Lake Michigan shoreline. And then as we hit 5, 6 a.m., everything is fading away, fizzling out, and we should be quiet then across our area for a good part of Tuesday. There's a cold front that is responsible for the initiation of these storms, but the storms themselves will race out ahead of that cold front. Let me see if I can find a regional temperature map, and you should be able to pick the frontal boundary out pretty quickly from that. Let's see here. Got to scroll through my show, and there it is. So this is, I might have to find the Midwestern view, or the North Central U.S., but you can see a clear delineation of some very hot air back towards the west. There's a warm front that will be lifting up through the area, and so that's going to open the door up for those 80s or 90s farther back to the west, and you don't see it on screen here. There is cooler air back into western parts of Minnesota. So what will happen is the storms will race through the area tonight. Then tomorrow, we open the door up to southerly winds, and you see that warmer air to our southwest. I don't think we hit 90 for a high, but mid and upper 80s can be expected. It's going to be turning muggy on your Tuesday behind these storms. And then it will be late tomorrow night or Wednesday that the front itself moves through, and then we knock temperatures down as we get into Wednesday and Thursday. We'll see our highs back in the middle 70s. Right now, lower to mid 70s. Not too bad temperature-wise, and feeling pretty comfortable out there, but like I mentioned, we are looking at the humidity going up, so our dew points during the day Tuesday are likely to be in the upper 60s, and we could even see some lower 70s. Amy Sutton, when we're looking at forecast radar imagery, which is essentially what this is like a future radar. The greens would indicate lighter rain, yellows and oranges indicating heavier rain, and then the deeper shades of red and the pinks would indicate even heavier rain, possibly some hail. What I am doing as a meteorologist is then inferring that if you've got that heavy rainfall coming down, you're going to be mixing some strong winds down to the ground. That's something that you can look at when we're actually analyzing the radar. You can expect very strong winds to accompany a storm where you see a really quick, almost instantaneous ramp from the greens up to the reds. If that is spread out over more distance, you don't get that intense rain driving any of that wind down to the ground. The forces that drive these storms, the winds anyway, are generally in that 1 to 3 mile range above our heads. And so if you get very heavy rain falling through those stronger winds, it can mix some of that strong wind down to the ground. And so that's what our concern would be. And when I see even the future view radar here at 3 o'clock in the morning, and I'll go ahead and put my arrow on screen just to have a little frame of reference, and since you're not able to see me point. When you see the quick ramp up from the light green right on into the reds in just that very small, tight range, you would expect very strong wind to accompany that versus something that's a little more prolonged and spread out where you have a few more layers of green before you get into the orange, that kind of deal. So it's just years of radar analysis and just taking the future view radar here and kind of applying that look to what I would expect the radar signature to be as it starts to come into our area. Now we'll be able to sample those winds with the radar as the storm itself is approaching any of the Green Bay radar in particular. We would be able to sample some wind speed out of those storms. Now, you got to keep in mind that the radar beam is going up as it gets away from the radar, so we may only be hitting those storms at 1 or 2 miles up as they first start to get into the area. And so it's not necessarily a direct correlation that, the winds aloft, 2 miles up or 80 miles an hour, and the rain falling through that makes it 80 miles per hour at the ground. That's not necessarily how it goes, but you can at least expect there to be winds that might be 85, 90% of that would make it to the ground. And so that would lead you to more in that line of 65 or 70 mile per hour winds, something of that magnitude. And the storm motion itself should be somewhere on that line, 50, 60 miles per hour or so, maybe even a little faster than that. So the storms are really going to be moving tonight, and there's just a lot of momentum, a lot of energy aloft that would be associated with that. And so if you get heavy rain coming down through that, it makes it pretty easy to mix some of that stronger wind down to the ground. So our principal concern will be for those strong winds. Now, when you get a cluster that comes in like this, what you usually would see on the radar would be small areas where it bows out. So you notice right here towards just getting out off of Door County, you see a little surge right there. You see a little bit of a bowing segment right here into Manitowoc County. Now, it may not line up exactly like that when the storms get here, but when you see that bowing signature like that, it's a good sign that you've got some very strong winds kind of punching through the line right in that spot. And so you would expect some locally higher wind gusts right in those bowing areas. And then where that starts to kink back into the main line, that's where you can get your spin-ups. And so we'll have to wait and see how the radar looks tonight as things are incoming. But those will be the features that I'm looking for if we're doing some on-air cut-ins and things like that, would be to identify those risk areas and then kind of focus in on that as being our spots where we'd be most concerned with some wind damage, whether that be down trees and power lines or perhaps something more significant than that. Hopefully we don't get into that kind of a scenario tonight, but certainly the risk is there. This is going to be a night with some very strong wind accompanying any storms that would move through, and high-resolution computer guidance has been in very good agreement that a cluster of storms will form out of whatever is developing into Minnesota. And we'll go ahead and take another check back here on the radar and just take a look and see if we've got you can see a few more storms now popping up north of the Twin Cities and into northwestern Wisconsin. So again, the expectation here will be for those storms to kind of congeal up into a cluster and then race down right through central and into eastern Wisconsin. So that's why we went with our first alert weather day through the night. We are expecting that round of storms early morning hours, and given that overnight timing, that does make it a little more dangerous because a lot of us will be asleep by that point. So we do encourage you to have our weather app there with the alerts turned on, have a weather radio radio perhaps handy with make sure it's tuned in and good fresh batteries. Get your devices charged up in case you lose power, so you'll have a way of getting that life-saving information. As I said, if we need to, we will go into streaming coverage, wall-to-wall type coverage. At 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, we're not interrupting the hockey game or something like that. We would if we were under the gun for that kind of weather tonight. But fortunately for all the hockey fans out there, we are not seeing these storms come in quite so early. But nonetheless, the concern is there that we will see those strong thunderstorms arriving late tonight. We're starting to see things kick up. Last check on the Storm Prediction Center has an 80% watch probability out for northwestern Wisconsin, and one would expect that if that watch comes out and the storms materialize, we eventually do see that watch extended farther into central and eastern Wisconsin. Something that I have noted as we've seen the storms initialize into northern Minnesota is that it was a severe thunderstorm watch that came out, not a tornado watch. There is an area of low pressure back there into Minnesota, but even closer to that low, there wasn't enough shear for the Storm Prediction Center to put in that tornado watch. So that would bode well for anyone that is worried about tornado activity tonight. Yes, it is possible, but my main concern is going to be from straight line winds, and that's not to say that you should let your guard down or something like that, because as we outlined earlier, you get a wind, reported wind gusts or at least an expected wind gust out of a storm at 70 miles an hour, that will do the same kind of damage that an EF0 tornado would do, and in fact probably do it in a more widespread fashion just because that storm is going to cover more area. Most of your lower end EF0, EF1 type tornadoes may only have a damage path of 50 to 150 yards. But you have a storm that spans several miles producing winds at 60, 70 miles per hour. You can spread that damage out over a much larger area. So you certainly want to take any warnings that would be issued tonight seriously and have a way to get those warnings early in the morning. Again, a breakdown of my threats. 60 plus mile per hour wind gusts is my main concern. There will be heavy rain that accompanies these storms. If we were looking at slower storm motion, maybe I'd be a little more concerned with flooding. The only reason it's really on the radar right now is just because of how wet it has been. We've had some areas, at least on radar estimates, upwards of 5-10 inches of rain just in the last several days, and so you add another couple of inches to that out of a thunderstorm, and you certainly could see some standing water again and dealing with some flooding concerns through the morning. But the good news here is that the storms are moving out pretty quickly, and so it will give those floodwaters time to recede before most of our folks would be headed back out onto the road. Jeff, the radar signature will look derecho-like. I would not expect, now I'm not saying that it can't happen, but I wouldn't expect the storms to quite reach that level of intensity in terms of widespread, 90, 100, or, in some cases 120 plus mile per hour winds like they were dealing with back with that Iowa event that you mentioned. I wouldn't rule it out. We'd certainly keep our guard up, but I'm not expecting the storms to get to that level. I'd want to say that that night probably had the Storm Prediction Center in the high-risk category, and there are signs that we expect strong and severe thunderstorms, but they're not ringing those kind of alarm bells. That being said, you certainly do want to pay attention to things late tonight, early in the morning, just in case, but this does not... the radar may look similar, but I don't expect the storms to reach that level of intensity as they did with that particular derecho. There is a set definition for how much damage needs to be done, how widespread it is, how prolonged it is, and so we may not meet that criteria in terms of meeting the strict definition, but there may be pockets of wind damage that would rival something like that. So we'll be certainly keeping an eye out for those stronger winds. I don't think, again, that we reach quite that level of magnitude, but I would not be at all surprised if we do have some warnings come out for 70 mile per hour wind gusts or something of that magnitude. In terms of the tornado risk, it's lower on the spectrum. It is possible that we do get spin-ups, but that's what I would expect them to be, is spin-up tornadoes and not, long-lived, damaging. Or I shouldn't use the term damaging because, anyone in the path of even an EF0, you're going to have damage. But those long-lived and really violent tornadoes. That's not the kind of weather setup that we've got going on tonight. So there could be some spin-ups. They would be the weaker variety, but odds are it would be very difficult to even pinpoint them because they're going to be mingled in with severe wind damage. And so you may have embedded tracks within that stronger thunderstorm wind pattern, but I would not be expecting any long-lived violent tornadoes or anything like that tonight. But there is certainly concern for some widespread wind damage and power outages. Yeah. Nick, that's what I would say. The heaviest rain probably, it looks like in the 2 to 4 a.m. range, maybe right in the middle of that. If the last several runs of computer guidance have been on to anything, it's probably right around 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning that the initial line gets into the Fox cities, and it's going to move out as quickly as it moves in. So there'll be a window there for an hour or so where there could be some heavier rainfall, but then it's in and out of the area. Rain totals overall, probably not much more than half an inch to an inch widespread, but there certainly could be some isolated spots that do pick up more like 1 to 2 inches if you can get a little bit of training taking place or some sustained heavier rainfall in behind the main line. That is something that would be possible for some higher end rainfall. But because these storms are going to be moving so quickly, it's going to be very difficult to get 2, 3, 4 inches of rain out of them just because they are moving at 50, 60, maybe 70 miles an hour. And so what we would say the instantaneous rain rate may be up in that territory. It might be, 5 inches, 7 inches an hour, but the storm isn't going to hang tight in that one spot for an hour. It's going to be in and out very quickly. So that will help to mitigate the heavy rain and the flooding potential. But certainly that is something we'll watch for. If we weren't as wet as we have been over the last couple of weeks, I would not be as concerned as I am with flooding. Normally a cluster of storms comes through and you're picking up an inch of rain, no big deal in a normal summer, but this has not been a normal late spring or early summer. We've definitely had our fair share of wet weather and could certainly use a break, and unfortunately, we have more of this ongoing. The good news is that this is really the only kind of bullseye day, if you will, from a storm standpoint. There will be another round of probably some scattered rain showers on Wednesday as the cold front itself moves by. I don't expect that would be anything severe. We'll have to keep an eye out for late Friday and into Saturday morning. Maybe there is something stronger in that mix, but we at least have a couple of days there with quiet weather and not much going on. Chris, yes, I would expect there to be a watch issued at least upstream in northwestern Wisconsin, and then from that point onward, we would be looking at the potential for a watch to be extended on into the area. So let's see, what time is this? We're pushing close to 9:30 here. I got to get an update recorded for our 24/7 Weather Channel. I will go back through and see if there's any question or anything that I missed. But I would say we've covered the bases, at least at this point. I'll go ahead and pop the 7-day up just so you can see the extended forecast. We will see the potential for strong to severe storms arriving late tonight, as mentioned. I would recommend you charge your devices. If you've got a weather radio, make sure it's got fresh batteries. If the winds come in at the magnitude that they could, I would certainly anticipate that we have some power outages and some tree damage to contend with during the early morning hours, and then obviously dealing with picking up those pieces as the sun comes back out. But it's a fast-moving system. It will be in and out of the area very quickly, but unfortunately it is an early morning type of system, so it's midnight to 5 a.m. is the broad range, and I think most of us it's going to be more in that 2 to 4 a.m. range the way things are looking right now. So I'm going to go ahead and pop up the 7-day forecast for you, and with that I will check back in and see if we've got any additional questions that I can answer. Feel free to head over to my Facebook page and you can throw a question up there, and again I'll try to answer it if I can. Have a safe night. Should any warnings be issued, take them seriously. But the good news is at least it's a fast-moving system. It's not going to be something we're dealing with through the duration of the entire night. The storms will be in and out pretty quickly, but they could be pretty intense as they do arrive. So hope you have a great night. Stay safe, and I will be, it'll be a late night for me, and it's probably one of those that Chief Meteorologist Steve Balon and I will get to cross paths, as we'll be here late night watching these storms come in, and then, of course, we'll pass any alerts and updates on to you.